Hi, guys. This is Affan. First episode of our podcast series, starting with William Wong of Arterton, our partner store in London. I'm not going to have to introduce myself, but I will let William do the introduction for him. Hi, William. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good, very good. Good to have you back on a video call. I see you have your full setup with the mic and
Ah.
you said natural light, which is great. Tell us first of all about yourself a little bit, please, and then we'll talk about the store. Who's William Wong? What did you do? What are you
Well, I'm
doing?
sitting right here. Sure, of course. I don't know if it's terribly interesting, but I am the proprietor of Arterton, and what we're trying to do and how it's relevant to Bridlen is we're really trying to sort of build up a community for sartorial enthusiasts as well as shoe enthusiasts. And by that, I mean, guys who like dressing a certain way, sort of donning clothes that fit well, that are of quality, and wearing shoes that are Goodyear welted, hand welted. And my sort of position on this is there's not really a hub like this in London. I think there's some places like this in the rest of the world.
Mhm.
Um, Hats off to Mark Cho of the Armory. I think Mark and Alan have done an excellent job with the stores in New York and in Hong Kong. There's
That's right.
certainly a community feel. I think, and funnily enough, right? Because London is sort of a mecca of these sorts of things. Um, Funnily enough, we don't seem to have that in London, at least not to the same extent as the Armory. So I think we're sort of taking a page from their book there, but we're trying to do a few different things as well. One thing that we really wanted to do was bring in independent makes, such as yourself, such as Bridlen, into
Mhm.
the fold. I think these deserve a bit more recognition. And a bit more accessibility for some of the folks here. I mean, here's the thing: we're not shoving down brands into people's throats. We're saying,
No.
hey, we're giving you an option. There's Bridlen there if you want to try it. There's Acme, there's Ure, and so on and so forth. Right? That's how I'm sort of relevant to the menswear community, and I hope things that I uh, do help the community and are appreciated by some folks.
That's a very interesting point you made there, and one I'm going to come back to and circle on to in just a little bit. But I want to know a little bit more about what you did. What's your background? What brought you into
Oh,
menswear
right.
itself, as it were?
Right. I mean, it's a common story because here's the thing. If you're going to do something, and if you're choosing to do something, you better hope that A, you're good at it, and B, it's something that you enjoy,
Yeah.
right? I mean, ideally, you want to have both conditions. Now, I was sort of a menswear fan for a while. I remember sort of being, you know, barely an adult, 18, 19, being from Hong Kong. What I did was sort of, find nice cloths that I like here and
Mm.
there, and then I'll take it to sort of an independent tailor in Hong Kong. And Hong Kong is sort of a mecca for this sort of stuff. There are lots of
Yes, yes.
workshops going around, especially in the 2000s. You could, take some cloth, go upstairs to sort of this industrial building, um, and go say hi to some tailors and have a chat. And that's how I sort of got to know the other side of the trade, because of course there's the part where you walk into the store and they say, oh, good afternoon, sir, how can I help you, right? May I park your car or whatever, right? But there's sort of another side where it's sort of speaking to tailors, and I sort of got into the nitty gritty of that. So I was always a fan of sort of menswear, the menswear craft, and indeed the industry itself. Now, of course, I've had sort of other jobs, as many people do. I think it's important for personal development. So I was a personal trainer for a bit. I worked at the
That's
family company
interesting.
for a bit. Um, I did do and I suspect this is why you asked. I did do a PhD at Cambridge in philosophy of science, and I was a lecturer for a bit. So I've had all these different jobs, and in fact, I'm still, engaged in some of these projects. But Arterton has been my recent passion. It's been going very well, and we've been sort of dedicating more time to it. So, somebody asked me the other day, how do you divide your time between your different projects? Well, normally I like to do, 50-50, let's say, but now it's like 90% Arterton, 10% everything else.
That's a
Uh,
lot of
but I
commitment.
enjoy it,
Yeah, that's
and that's
that's
okay for
good. I can see you have many talents, but didn't know you had this
me.
much of background to menswear itself. And I suppose if there's any good place to learn off of it, Hong Kong would be that. It's quite the tailoring mecca, as it were. And
But
you,
here's the thing.
yeah.
Sorry if I interrupted. Hong Kong, I think I've said this before once. It is a gold mine, right? It's a gold
Mm,
mine because, look, there are lots of tailors around. There is a comparative advantage in Hong Kong in that sort of tailoring wages are not as high as, say, London, right? So you can sort
mm,
of get a bit more bang for buck. But here's the thing, I think Hong Kong was for a long time an international destination for business travelers. People sort of fly in, fly out, and it's sort of created this industry of, you know,
mm.
making suits in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And mind you, not very nice suits. So just as it's a gold mine because of its history, it's British history, I should say, as well as competitive wages. It's also sort of a minefield based on how many sort of tourist traps there are, let's
Mm.
say. So you got to be careful, and I suppose that's a good, learning ground. Because if you're sort of in a harsh environment where things can go wrong, you might sort of make a few mistakes, as I certainly have, and
Yes.
you learn from them, right?
Learn from them. Yeah.
So I'm not saying I got ripped off, Affan, but
No. But you had a good
maybe
learning,
one or
let's
two
say.
people were dishonest, right?
Yeah.
I mean, imagine, me being 19, 20, oh, I like bespoke tailoring. Oh, I'm bringing in cloth and so on and so forth. They might sort of get certain ideas and you know, and have their own intention, albeit dishonorable.
No, but that's it's a good learning curve, and what better place than Hong Kong? But then it's almost a homecoming in some way because back to where the British tailoring started. You're just off of Jermyn Street now, and
Yeah.
that must feel good in some way. A prestigious location where you are right now on Princess Arcade. We've spoken in the past about location, 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 and I know you were looking for the right moment, the right time to move into this space. Now that you are here, are you happy with where you are? How does it feel to be just behind Jermyn Street?
I mean, there's certainly a sense of historical significance, right? But like, at the end of the day, it's about practicality, and the two are indeed intertwined. When sort of our folk go shopping, well, where do they go? Right? I mean, there's on the one hand Savile Row, on the other hand Jermyn Street. So, um, it might make good sense to have a showroom there. So, put it this way, you know this. We've been looking for a showroom for a year and a half, I think, possibly even more. We've viewed a lot. We really have. I've given up, Saturdays and Sundays to go do viewings. Um, and there's always just something missing. In truth, part of our business is very much a retail destination. We do a lot of hang-ons for Savile Row. I think the last time I did the calculations, we do 72% of Savile Row. Much of these
Wow.
hangers are truthfully probably a product where you wouldn't sort of, walk past and think, I, want to, carry that home and buy it now. It's more like, I've heard about these. I have a need. Perhaps I like the workmanship. Perhaps I like the craft. Perhaps I like the way it complements bespoke suiting because it supports them in the right ways. Hangers are more like things that you buy online or
Mm.
you buy in advance or you buy on telephone. So again, I think we're very much a retail destination for that aspect of the business. Shoes, on the other hand, is probably a bit of both. Usually they are more retail and footfall is important, but because we're a bit specialist, because these shoes are marketed and presented on the basis of their quality, on the basis of their craft, rather than branding, it is still somewhat a retail destination item. Um, but having said this, I still thought being in a very central location is important,
Mm.
despite the additional costs. So that was sort of the business side of things. At the end of the day, right, you just want something that works,
Yeah.
and having it in the Princess Arcade was the right decision. And I didn't know that when we were signing the lease. I didn't know that when we were renovating. But I think I know that now, having the showroom being open for a few months.
Well, that's very good to hear. I remember when you started off the pop-up store on Savile Row and you were still looking for something. It was supposed to be sort of around the corner in the next 3 months or so. It took a good part of almost 10 months. But then now that
Yeah.
you're here, it's a good place. Quite excited to be there in the next month to see where it is. I know it's just off of Jermyn Street. It's on the other side. You've got Savile Row, so it's definitely a good location. Glad you guys finally able to nail this location. But tell me, has brick and mortar always been the plan? Because as you know, nowadays everything starts online, and I think you all started online first as well.
No, it's absolutely part of the plan. I mean, there are a few considerations, right? As I said, I think we're trying to build a community of sorts. We can indeed build the community without a custom-facing retail space, but I think it'll be much harder. You're right. We had most of our operations being online. In fact, online is still very important to us. We have a self-contained warehouse building in Camden. That's about 10 minutes away from central London. That's where we hold most of the stock, do some of the R&D, and in fact do some of the value-added services like assembly and engraving. We needed to keep that space because number one, we do have a lot of stock, right? That's important for us because
Yep.
customers can get their shoes, can get their hangers, can get their bags quickly. But also, we do a lot of B2B. So you've mentioned online, you mentioned retail, but I would say there's maybe a third arm, a third facet, which is B2B. So we support a lot of the satorial brands, as well as a few UK menswear brands like Hackett. Now, in order to support those brands, we need to be able to do embroidery in-house,
Yeah.
to add the logos in-house, to do engraving, to do assembly, change some of the hooks around, so on and so forth. So there are sort of a hidden element to Arterton, and that's to do a lot of the B2B. I think in terms of the product, it definitely is it definitely makes sense. We're doing a lot of these garment bags, a lot of these hangers, a lot of these shoes. It makes sense to sort of help some of these other UK menswear brands out
Well,
for specialism. That is.
thank you. I'm going to ask you to now speak a little bit about these other brands. You mentioned hangers. I don't think our viewers necessarily know what makes Nakata hangers special, or also the other shoe brands that you carry. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yarn, about the other products, the bags, for example, the garment bag. That's something I need to pick up from you next time I'm there.
Sure. Yeah.
So many of our customers have actually asked for Nakata hangers and for the bags.
Have they?
Yes, they have, and I'd be the first one.
You're not just being nice.
No, no. I should speak to you about how to bring that to our store as well. But then please let them know, and maybe they can reach out to you directly as well. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about the other brands besides Bridlen that you have in your store.
Right. So there was recently an article on Arterton. I think the subtitle was something like Arterton, the store that sells everything except for clothes. And that is very much true. It's not that, I'm, against clothing. I mean, I'm not sitting here naked.
No, actually.
But we do have certain specialisms, and these specialisms are menswear accessories that are high end, and that's sort of a key thing for me. There's really no point in doing something that's not high end for me personally. It perhaps would, if I were to do that, it would probably bring a bit less enjoyment to me. It's not something that I might want to use myself. If you want to engage in an activity, right, you want to sort of be excellent at it.
Yeah.
My endeavor to Arterton is not a profit-making exercise. I think for many people, what they're motivated by is not money, but other things. And I'm no exception. If I were in the business of trying to make a few bucks, I might very well actually go a bit more mass market. In fact, I mean, you and I are in the industry. We actually know that's probably true, right? But in our case, I think we are concerned about the craft, about the design, and about the culture,
Yeah.
let's say. It's hard to sort of put a finger on what we mean by culture, but it's sort of the embodiment of all things to do with maybe how it looks, how people sort of behave when they're buying the product, when they're wearing a product, and so on and so forth. It sounds a bit waxing poetic, but that's actually what I think
No,
I mean.
it's true. What you say is true. You need a healthy dose of passion as well to be in this space, because if you're looking just to make a quick buck, we're not in the right space. You'll make your buck anyway, but you
Yeah.
need that passion. You need to want to sort of save the heritage, the tradition, the craft, as it were.
Yeah. Listen, I don't want to overstep my boundary, but I don't know if this is sort of a one-way thing, if it's a two-way thing, but can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
So, what was the reason you started Bridlen then?
I actually didn't start Bridlen. That's the funny story. My father and Mr. Watanabe started the brand, and I simply came along and saw that these guys were doing a great thing, but then had it restricted only to the Japanese market, right?
Right.
So Mr. Watanabe and my father met one day for actually doing a different business. It was supposed to be a B2B business, which they did eventually start, making shoes for a department store in Japan. But they also saw that this was an opportunity to make a brand of their own.
Right.
They saw that online sales was just starting to become a thing. This is now going back 2010, 2011, where
Right.
people were still wary about buying anything online, for that matter, leave alone shoes. But they said, let's put, sort of one foot in that puddle, as it were, and leave it there for a while, see how that develops. So they couldn't do it obviously in the same brand that they were selling in the department store. So they had to start a different one. And that was Bridlen.
Right.
But one kind of focus point they said that they do with Bridlen is that they'd use the best materials that they could get their hands on, not have to water down quality or the craftsmanship just because it's being sold online. What we offer offline in a store with all that extra service and explanation is what we'll try to do online as well. We'll do that through videos, we'll do that through other mediums where we can explain things to a customer who wants to purchase something online. So they started this this brand called Bridlen, and I don't know if you know the story of the name itself. It comes from
Tell us.
it comes from what the horses wear. I don't know how to pronounce it, but I think it's called a bridle.
Rather leather,
Yeah, the
yes.
bridle. Yeah. So this is where the horses have this thing where they can sort of race horses to focus just on looking ahead and not have to distract themselves. And it was that. It was to just focus on quality and nothing else. You'll have lots of things happening around you. Style will come and go, fashion will come and go, but quality will always remain something that's going to, bring back a customer.
Right.
So that was how Bridlen came about. And the Japanese have a way of, wordplay. So Bridlen, it became Bridlen. And,
Right.
so that's how Bridlen came about. And I simply then came around to answer your question in a long about way to say, hey, you guys are doing this for Japan. It's not fair that it's only available then to a Japanese speaking audience. Can we do this to a .com and make it available to the English speaking world, as it were?
Right.
That's
But currently you're crafting it in a very specific direction, which, correct me if I'm wrong, is concerned about quality and craftsmanship. I mean, these words we hear all the time. People use it a lot. Most people mean what they say. But in your case, you are very much controlling it and steering it in that direction. And that's what I meant. That's one of the motivating factors for that which you do.
Correct. And that was actually one of the motivating factors for Mr. Watanabe also to find a factory and an owner in a factory who has the passion to learn the craft. Because what he was seeing, because he worked for almost 40 years in Europe, in Spanish factories, in Northampton factories, where he found that there were fewer and fewer younger people coming into the industry, which meant that this craft would die eventually at some point, a few generations later. But even if it doesn't completely die out, which I don't think it will, certain aspects of the craft that needs to be passed on from generation to generation will lose its way. So he said, I want to work in a younger country, as it were, where there are younger people coming into the space even now, so I can pass on some of that craft to you. And then it becomes your responsibility to pass it on further down. So when he came on, he was really in a charged atmosphere where he wanted to teach things. And here we were, my father especially, very willing to learn. And that's the kind of general atmosphere in our factory. You'd
Yeah.
see people when
Yeah.
you new, hopefully one day. It's a younger crowd, and they're all very eager to learn. So when Mr.
Yeah.
Watanabe came around and changed things, and this is not how you do it. This is how I would teach you to do it. People were very
Yeah.
willing to learn that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely part of it. That actually brings me to my next question, which is
Sure.
about heritage and tradition. I think you're doing a great service to this space, really, not just in maintaining that heritage and tradition, let's say, of the Goodyear welted craft, or with a little bit of tailoring as well, which we didn't quite touch on, but also try to bring this from a different geography, right? You've been, I'd say, championing the Asian market. So you've brought us from Bridlen in India to, well, sort of the center of shoemaking to the UK. You've also brought a Chinese brand. You brought yarn
Right.
so how does this feel to bring Southeast Asian brands onto Jermyn Street, as it were? You're kind of taking the challenge, as it were, to where it all started. Yes, you said earlier that you're bringing in the choice. That's what I said. We'll come back to this conversation later on. Yes, you are, but you're bringing also a different conversation to that. Is that something you deliberately had as part of your plan? And what's the sort of thinking around this? What's your challenges and uh,
Yeah. So I'm very glad you asked this question. Look, it was indeed very deliberate, but it wasn't to discriminate against certain other countries. I think, look, if you have a quality make, a quality brand, if you're doing something unique, we want to bring it in and make it a bit more accessible, right? Um, so you're right. It tends to be the case that some of our brands do come from different parts of Asia. We've got Yuan, which of course is made in China, and now made in China's, I guess, kind of sounds like a bad word. Oh, made in China. It's absolutely crap, right? Yes and no. Sometimes made in China is crap. Trust me. I threw away lots of things that I ordered from eBay, let's say. But sometimes it's
Alibaba?
not.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
really depends on how it's crafted. And I think sort of China is at a turning point right now. It's the industrialization period has been fine and dandy, and they're sort of turning around the corner, focusing a bit more services, a bit more high-tech stuff, and it trickles all the way down to things like shoes. Just think about Japan, right? In the 1940s, right after World War II, anything that was made in Japan was considered crap.
yeah.
I think, there's a line in Back to the Future. I forgot if it was Back to the Future 1 or 2, where, they go back to the 60s and that is, they go back they go back to the 60s from the 80s, right? And I think Marty brings, a camcorder, JVCU or whatever, and it's made in Japan. And Doc says, "Oh, it's made in Japan. It must be crap," right? But the joke was that made in Japan in the 80s was already excellent, right?
Yeah.
I think Italy had a similar phenomenon, um, albeit probably to less of a difference. But I think China is currently experiencing that. So there are certainly some good things coming out of China and some bad things. The point is not to discriminate simply with respect to where it's made, but we discriminate with respect to how it's made, right? And that's an important principle. Now, why do I mention this? Because I think these sort of principles are what helped us select Bridlen. It doesn't matter much to us where it's made. This isn't sort of a patriotic exercise where we champion, Asian Pacific brands for the sake of being Asian Pacific, but rather it is a good quality product. And in some cases, there's excellent value. I would say this is the case for both Yuan and Bridlen. And because of that, it deserves a bit more recognition. Well, how do we know this? We know it because consumers ask for it, our clients ask for it. When we do bring it, they're very interested in Bridlen, they're very interested in Yuan. And of course, their actions speak louder than words. Bridlen and Yun are doing very well. People like it. I think it was important, especially for shoes, to make it accessible in the sense of allowing them to try it in store, allowing them to exchange for different sizes if it doesn't fit, right? If you look at the statistics, in terms of sort of menswear accessories, the biggest sorry, the item that is returned the most are actually shoes, right? Where returns is classified as returns and exchanges. So that's telling you something. It's not that there's some, malicious false advertising going
No,
on, where they, see a picture and then they receive something else. It's just that it didn't fit and they didn't know that until they ordered it.
that's it.
But when you have an in-store shop, it helps. Now, of course, you guys are quite specialists. You guys answer questions. If a client goes to you and be like, which size should I go buy? You will answer them, I'm sure. You will tell them and you'll guide them, and that helps a lot. But if you are sort of a big brand, you might not do that. So I think some of these statistics were informed by the whole industry. So to sum
No,
up, again, I speak a lot. I don't know if
no,
this is, if
that's
I
what
should
we
be
want.
asking you questions.
No, no,
I feel a
that's
bit
what we want to
rude.
know. We want to know as much as we can from you. People have seen enough of me, but that's a
Yeah.
good point for me to bring in and close this call as well. Bring in the point that we're going to start the custom order service. That's what
Yes,
we're
yes.
calling our program, and we're going to be there on the 5th of May with you. The day before, we will be at the Super Trunk Show. On the 5th of May, we're going to have the Meet the Shoemaker. So anybody
Yeah,
who's interested to come and meet myself, I'll be there with you and helping your clients understand fitting. And
yeah.
well, I've got these cutouts which I'm going to bring to you. This is what we
Okay.
have.
Nice. Yeah,
Are two kind of swatch books, as it were, so clients can come
yeah.
in. We'll have quiet time at the lounge that you have there.
Yes,
And
yes,
go to
yes.
the book, choose their styles. I'll be there to recommend a certain type of leather for certain types of shoes and whatnot.
Fantastic.
So that's happening on the 5th. I'm looking forward to seeing that, and most importantly, I'm looking forward to seeing your store, the Arterton.
Yep, yep, yep. That's right. Yeah, you haven't quite seen it yet.
Yeah.
Now, meet the Shoemakers. It's going to be on the 5th of May. What else is happening on that day? Could you tell the listeners?
Sure. I mean, we've done a few of these Meet the Shoemakers events
Yep.
across the country. This is the first time we're taking it internationally. Internationally, we've only done it with the Super Trunk Show. Now that we have a brick and mortar store like yourselves to be at, it's a day for your clients to come and learn more about ourselves, how the shoes are made. I'm somebody who is most of the time in the shoe factory. So that's something that's interesting for people to know how shoes are made. They come for that. The other thing they come for is more sort of expert advice, as it were, on fitting. I have this and this issue. What can you do for me? And I would recommend them seeing their feet or their particular issue, that this particular last on our collection would probably suit you better. So that's the other part of it. And then the third part of it is more sort of styling advice. Generally,
Right.
people want to know, I dress like this to work, or this on weekends. What would you recommend? I pair this with what kind of shoes? So there's sort of three major components, as it were. But really, it's just a lot of fun meeting and knowing new people, knowing your clients, and I look forward to that
Yeah.
that hour, a whole day soon enough.
All right. Us too.
Super. William, this was fun. I'm sure our customers and across the world who didn't know much about Arterton and about hangers and other things that you do would have learned a thing or two today. We're going to put links and whatnot below on the video and on wherever else it comes up on this screen. So thanks very much. And I hope to see you very soon, William.
All right. See you soon. Let's get a lunch sometime.
I'll see you soon. I'll get
Yeah.
that lunch.
All right. All
Thanks.
right. See ya.
See you.
See ya.